Hello, um, my name is Jasilyn Charger. I am from Eagle Butte, South Dakota. I am from the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation. Um, I'm part of a delegation that came here, a delegation of youth, just to really tell our story about the Dakota Access Pipeline, the KXL pipeline, and other water fights we're having on our reservation. Not only that, but just the struggle for tribal sovereignty, um, to really sustain relationships with the tribal government and the U.S. government. Um, my experience really being on the front line and defending my indigenous people, being at age that I am, as a young person, a youth, is a really struggle because um, and the tribal systems, but not only that, in the governmental systems, the youth voice isn't really heard because of our age or how we're presented just in just the social society of being youth and being ignorant. Um, a lot of us really grew up with resistance, having grandparents that fought against fought alongside Leonard Peltier, and just growing up and hearing about the fish wars here in Salish tribes, um, just really growing up and seeing that our mothers and our fathers are fighting for us, and so we really didn't think that was really fair to us because we know, we learn, and we listen. Just because we're young doesn't mean that we don't understand that our water is important and that our land is important and that it is a part of who we are. And growing up, I've always been taught my traditions, but I was also taken away at a young age into a foster care system, and so I know and I've learned and I had to deal with a lot of different aspects of the government versus tribal government, and also with that tribal sovereignty within stolen children, within water fights, and just defending our people as a whole and our right as a human being here, being an indigenous person of Turtle Island. And so um, when I first started out, when I was 18 years old, I started fighting for our buffalo. Our buffalo were being taken away by the government to slaughterhouses, and the buffalo for my people, the Lakota people of the plains, is a really important resource to us. It's our entire diet, and it holds a lot of cultural aspects to us because we use every part of the buffalo, and we store it for winter for our elderly, and it was being stolen from us because the government said that we owed them money for tax reasons, just for being on the reservation, for where we were unjustly put. Um, we we still see it not as a reserve or a reservation. We see it as a prisoner of war camp because our people were stolen or pushed or taken from our nomadic hunting grounds, and we were put in groups and pens and said that we had to stay there. If we didn't stay there and we wandered off, we would be shot on sight. And going from that to Standing Rock, where we're fighting again for natural resources, for our water and for our land. We went off our reserves, our reservations, and they told us we couldn't be there, and they held guns to us. And it was all peaceful, we were prayerful in the beginning. I'm one of the runners that ran from Cannonball, North Dakota to Washington, D.C., and another run from Cannonball, North Dakota to Omaha, Nebraska. And it was all youth that went on the run. A few of our elder women went with us too. And it was all because our tribal government and our tribal leaders weren't listening to their people. They weren't listening to the people who were actually had to live with these problems. They had their own agenda. They were arguing amongst each other and whose fault it was for the pipeline even being there. And we didn't feel like it was the best interest of our people for us to be arguing amongst each other of a pipeline that we did not want in the first place. And we felt that was foolish of them. And we, being young people, they didn't hear us. We lobbied our tribal council people. We went to Congress. We went to our state senators, but nobody listened to us because we were just kids, just young babies in the eyes of, the adults. And we took upon ourselves to run because we didn't know what else we could do. We aren't old enough. Some of us weren't old enough to vote. A lot of us weren't old enough to really go on the front lines for ourselves. And so we said we'll run because in our people, in our culture, when you pass a message from one tribe to the next, you run. You carry that message onto a road and you leave everything on the road. And for us as youth, it was very impactful because for us, we stole power back. And that has never been done for us as youth. Because being powerless and saying these adults have power over you and they make decisions that will not only impact them but impact my children. And I'm not so young to be thinking about my children or my children's children. And we had little babies with us, and the youngest we had was 3 weeks old, and her mother carried her all the way to Washington, D.C. And the only people that actually got to meet with the government officials were the young people who ran. And the youngest with us was 2 years old. And her name was Wachoni. In our Lakota tongue, her name means life. And her older sister, Love, she spoke to the Army Corps of Engineers, and she said, "I'm running for my babies, for my children." And she was only 4 years old, and she understood the meaning, and she understood the concept of that she's doing this not only for herself but for the next generations. And we know and we understand and we learn. Just because we're young doesn't mean that we can't make an impact and we can't defend ourselves. It may not be in the normal ways that people do in resistance, but it was in a way that people can understood us and seen us as people, not as children, not as just commodities in the U.S. government, but as human beings, and that we have brains, we learn, and we can understand. And if these little children, if these little rise children can understand the meaning of life and the meaning of water and how much that is important to us, and do it in a way that was peaceful and prayerful and impactful to make people understand, we can do it on the front lines too. And we did it. When we came home back to Standing Rock, there was over 1,000 people camping there that heard us from that run. And it was amazing because we didn't know that just a few kids, like 25 kids from a reservation, from all 7 reservations, from Dakota, Nakota, and Lakota tribes, ran, and they ran with medicine, and they ran with the spirits of the people that were massacred on those lands. And it invoked something in all the tribes, not only in this continent, but in Canada and with our brothers down south. They all heard it, and they all came, and they all supported, and that has never happened in all the years that we have been colonized here on these continents. That has never happened. That has never been allowed in the last 50 years for even us to be able to practice our culture. And to invoke something like that from a few kids running and just trying to make their point and trying to be heard, and to unite all the tribes, even tribes that have been at feuds for over hundreds of years, the Crow and Lakota, and the Lakota and the Pawnee, and they buried their hatchets, and to actually plant that seed of resistance there, that not only carried from Standing Rock, but went to all different kinds of fights around the world, to Hawaii, to the Mauna Kea, down south in the Amazon. Like, it reached different people, and it made this net, this web of medicine that flows through all of us here, because we're all fighting for the same thing, and for our homeland, and just being alive, and just to be a human being, and to eat good food, and have clean water, and to be able to practice your ways that you have done for thousands of years, even before colonization. And just that experience of really taking back our power over our own lives, and really taking back, just using our rights that we have in the U.S. and utilizing those rights to make change, not only for us as Indigenous people, but for everybody. But I don't want to take too much of your time, but that's just something I want to share. That's where I come from. That's my experience, and we are still fighting Dakota Access right now. It's now linked to the Bayou Bridge in Louisiana, and that's where I've been currently fighting right now. And also we're fighting the KXL pipeline that is going through 17 miles away from our community in Eagle Butte, and that's going to be going here this fall. And if you guys want to hear more about it, or learn about my youth and our delegation, we travel to different places. We still help and we aid in different fights, and we're really good with community organizing, especially with the youth. But yeah, if you want to learn more about it, just feel free to ask me. But thank you for this opportunity, and